Welcome to one of the longest running conversation programs in American broadcast history. It's called Moral Side of the News, and we're glad you're alongside. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me, as always, is a distinguished panel: Reverend Harriett Akins Banman, Centenary United Methodist Church, New Albany; Reverend Daniel Corrie Shull, Burnett Avenue Baptist Church; Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School; and we welcome for just the second time Father Toan, St. John the Apostle Catholic Church in Brandenburg. Panel, we start with our first topic. Another mass shooting in America killed 3 children and 3 adults this week in Nashville. A 28-year-old former student of Covenant Christian School reportedly planned the attack carefully and legally obtained the automatic weapons used. Panelists, this again has us talking about gun laws in the country as well as mental health. Who would like to start?
Well, I really have nothing else to say about the subject until the United States government, both federally and locally, adopts gun legislation that will begin to stem the tide of people having access to these military-grade weaponry. We will continue to have these types of scenarios. Nashville is my hometown. Born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, drove past the Covenant Presbyterian Church many days. It's in a prominent area of town near a very popular mall that I would frequent. And it's heartbreaking that this has happened. But America is satisfied with our children being the casualty, being sacrificed literally on the altar of gun possession. There is no reason why any civilian needs access to an AR-15. There is no reason. Yet, a person who some say may have had mental health issues was able to purchase an AR-15. Now, beyond that, what makes it so very scary is if you watch the footage of that massacre, she literally shot through the doors to that school with the AR-15. So it is not that the school was not properly secured. It is not that doors were not properly locked. And being in public education, we often have these elaborate processes and protocols to ensure that buildings are secured. But now we are in a place and time where even if you follow all of the procedures, all of the policy as it relates to securing buildings, people take guns and just shoot through the doors, and we really have to either come to terms with how sick we have become as a society, if that is okay with us. And if we're not okay with it, then we need to begin to challenge the lawmakers who sit in high places but often do some terribly lowly things to either do the right thing or to put them out of office. I'll say this as the final thing. Governor Bill Lee has led the charge for Tennessee to have some of the least restrictions in the nation regarding gun possession. He has stripped every law that would have place any type of confines or regulations around gun purchasing, gun possession, where you can carry guns. And now this is the outcome of that. And even in the aftermath of it, Governor Lee won't repent for the environment that he has helped to create there in Tennessee, and neither will he commit to leading the charge to pass stronger gun legislation, which I think is abominable.
Earlier this morning, I had on television. There were huge demonstrations at the state capitol in Nashville on this point. I wasn't able to watch, but I hope that they are demonstrating for gun laws that will prevent this from happening again, not the opposite. Uh, that's that's where my thoughts and prayers come in. I never thought I would ever say that the concept of thoughts and prayers are trivial or meaningless. But at this point in time, especially when speaking to those folks who have suffered the loss of a dear one, thoughts and prayers, there are none. You know, in my tradition, sometimes we realize that thoughts and prayers don't do it. Sometimes, more than thoughts and prayers, just a single solitary hug. Because there are no words of comfort here. And I'm not sure that there are acts of comfort. But it's enough. Enough. It's not just in public schools, it's in private schools. It's all over the place. And it's considered, you know, the tragedy? That with Uvalde, with Sandy Hook, with this behavior has become business as usual. Yep. And that's an obscenity when we look upon the murder of young children as simply business as usual.
I read a piece this week by a survivor of Columbine. And her remark was, how is it that my school was not the first and last of school shootings? How is it that we are 130 shootings in just this year already? And so it leads me to the question of if we believe our children are of sacred worth, then at what point will we as a nation rise together to say, this is what we will do with our thoughts and action, our thoughts and prayers? These are the actions, the peaceable actions that we are led to do to show the sacred worth of our children and the educators. Listening to another report this morning, and a mother who lives in the neighborhood next to this school, and she said, I took my children to school this year and went through their active shooting protocols. And she said, it left me in tears to know that my children will have to do that drill throughout the year. And then this happens. I'm just kind of lost and really in some deep grief that we have not moved forward.
No, we've moved backward, Harriett. We're moving in the wrong direction.
Yep.
In the last several days, and the last week and the last several days of this week, our parish here, led by me, of course, we've been praying for the victims and all of their families, those who are now still living, grieving for the loss of their loved one, especially the young ones. That's one thing. Another thing is that before we began this show today, we were talking about asking the question whether there is any safety in public areas anymore in the U.S. And I think I didn't chip in at the end, but I think that's the concept of being safe for us now is so remote. We always have to, when we go to a public place, like a mall, a shopping place, or school, we have to keep thinking, are we safe anymore? And I think that many of our political leaders, they try to get their point or their campaign points to score something. They use these example as a starting point for their own political scores. I think the root problems is that we as a society, we need to do better. In a sense, remember when I was still in college reading, for example, Aristotle's and Plato's. And we need to go back, as Stan said earlier, we are not moving forward, but going back in a sense, in a bad sense, but we've lost many of our traditional values like moral and good upbringing. We need to educate our children from the very small what is wrong and what is right. And the wrong has to be shunned, the right has to be upheld. And I think we still learn about the situation, but this young lady, many of our young children now, I think they've lost the sense of identity. They are very unhappy about themselves. And so long as they are unhappy about themselves, they don't know who they are. And they have a sense of resentment or show a sense of resentment toward others. And it's very dangerous. We need to go back to the traditional education to teach our young what is morally right and what is morally wrong. And the right need to be upheld and the wrong need to be shunned and avoided. And I think our society has not done well in that regard.
Okay, panel, that's our first topic on moral side of the news. Thank you for watching and listening to us here. Second topic is the mental health crisis in America's youth caused, at least in part, by social media. The Jefferson County School Board says yes, and unanimously approved a resolution to file a lawsuit against multiple social media companies, specifically YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. The lawsuit claims that companies are contributing to the mental health crisis facing America's youth. I'll turn to Corrie Shull. Corrie, you're a member of the school board. Please tell us what you can.
Well, 90% of youth today use social media, primarily the social media platforms that they use are YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. Those platforms now have very complex algorithms that are able to determine what it is that interests a young person and also some of the issues that intersect with that interest. So a young person may go in to look at TikTok videos regarding soccer, and as that young person continues to click, they're being confronted with videos of how to stay at a certain weight, which in some instances contributes to bulimia. And all of those are occasioned by the algorithms that are being employed by social media companies. This is causing a dire mental health crisis among the youth of this nation, and it's impacting to be able to really educate young minds that feel school buildings day in and day out. And so JCPS is not the only school system that will be filing litigation against these companies, but school districts across the nation who understand the severity of the issue regarding mental health among young people and their usage of social media platforms are sounding the alarm and are filing this lawsuit. And the lawsuit is being filed against these companies, not only so they'll stop this very aggressive and manipulative algorithms, the uses of these algorithms, but so that they will also so that we can recoup the funds that we're having to spend out as a district toward mental health services. So, because youth are being assaulted with these mental health concerns, and we're having to respond by having an increase of mental health practitioners and professionals in our school buildings, which takes dollars away from the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And so we think that social media companies ought to pick up that bill.
I spent a few years living in Australia before I returned to the US 3 years ago. if you may recall, I think back in the turn of the 20th century, alcohol used to be banned. It's similar in Australia. So after a while, alcohol became accessible to adults, and now it's still, I think, across the nation, it's 21 and older. Uh, one can one buy alcohol. I hope that one day, um, I think that the use of social media can be very addicted, as the article is trying to say here, and to show that we may have to come to a point where we may have to ban the children's access to social media. Um, um, and I agree that the addiction can be very devastating to many young children. But I do have a questions for you and for the viewers here. Let's say if we join, if Jefferson County join other counties in suing these companies, if we win, then what happened with that? Will we get the money? And then what do we do with the money? And if we don't solve the root cause of using social media, then winning a case, I'm not sure it will do any good if we don't talk about the root cause of this new type of addiction among our young children.
Right. Yeah. So if we win the case, the money that is recouped from the lawsuit will go to mental health services. But I think we as a community, even as a nation, we have to talk about the place of social media in the lives of our children. There was a book that came out in the 1970s called Entertaining Ourselves to Death. And we have begun to do that, over the course of generations. It used to be sitcoms. Now it is all of the media platforms and outlets where you can go to YouTube and Netflix and Hulu, and you can, access media all times of the day and night. You can binge watch shows until your heart is content. And our kids are on social media all times of the day and night. They cannot even sit in class and learn without being on these social media platforms. Yeah. And it's really an issue that we'll have to deal with as a society, but I think it starts first at the family. Parents have to limit their children's usage and engagement with social media. And you've got to understand where your child is along the continuum of their maturation. So what we know is that middle and high school girls have higher rates of suicide directly correlated to their usage of social media. So it may be helpful for parents of middle and high school girls to disallow their high school girls from having access to social media. It's also a platform for a lot of mischief. So bullying used to happen on the school playground. Now bullying happens on the playground and online. And so whereas your child may be able to escape from the bullies on the playground, they then go home and get online, and they're further bullied digitally on social media platforms. And we've seen suicides that connect with that. For instance, there was a story of a girl who was interfacing with some bullies at school. The bullies pushed her down, took her backpack, threw everything out of the backpack and onto her. It was a terrible experience for her. She was humiliated. She was able to get up, put the things back into her backpack, get to class, and she made it home, was able to tell her parents about what she had experienced. They made her feel better, and it looked like she had gotten through that dark moment until she got to her room, picked up her phone, and found that the humiliating episode that she had experienced in the hallway of her school that day had been taped and had been recorded rather, and placed on social media. And now people all over her school and all over her community were laughing at her. And as a consequence, that young lady committed suicide that night. because of cyberbullying. This is something that we can't afford to just allow to keep happening to our children. We've got to respond, and we must respond decisively.
Your example, Corrie, clarified this for me, because initially I was worried that I agreed totally with what the school board did, but I didn't see a direct connection, and therefore I felt like it was a noble but very quixotic gesture. Now I see how this works, and we just need to we need to do something, and maybe, you know, if you work in government and go to certain meetings, you can't walk into the room where the meeting is happening with a cell phone or an Apple Watch or any sort of electronic equipment because of for security reasons. Maybe we need to, on our schools, just have our kids check their electronics in their locker before they go to class.
I think you're exactly right.
Once again, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is this. Somebody's going to propose this, and all of a sudden it becomes a First Amendment issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough.
I think we're at a place, Rabbi Miles, where we as a nation have to begin to calculate how important our children are to us. And I don't think that, it seems like everything is prioritized above our children. First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, and the children are the casualties of it all. I had a cell phone when I was in middle school. It was, in those days, a flip phone. There was no such thing as a BlackBerry then. There was no such thing, definitely as an Apple, as an iPhone. And I'm so grateful that it wasn't, because I cannot imagine navigating all that I was navigating in high school and in middle school, and then doing it with the added pressure of social media, and how social media forces young people to perform for the gaze of people, whoever is out there in their cyber world. And so I think parents, and I'm a proponent, honestly, that cell phones be disallowed from our public schools, because what we're seeing in JCPS particularly, and it's all across the nation, is students instigating fights, and they instigate fights so that they'll have content to download to social media. So they instigate a fight, record the fight, then upload the fight to social media, and it kind of feeds this vortex. So we have all of this misbehaving, all of this violence happening in our school buildings that all correlates to this insatiable need to have new content on social media. And it's the new way to get points with your peers, to be cool. And that's all undermining the process and the goal of education.
I think there are two pieces that also wrap into this, and that is going back to the question of identity and maturing, and we've all been there and had those bumps and bruises, and so that has not changed in our human nature, but the added pressure that all of this puts on it, where and how do we as a society buoy up our students and have them feel good about who they are as they're growing up. And in our faith traditions, we have that great privilege as well. And then the other piece that I think ties into this is not only what we allow on our cell phones, but what do we allow, all the violent, the games that are so violently oriented. And programming that is across all the platforms that we can sit down and watch, as you mentioned, Corrie, shuffling through Hulu or Netflix or whatever. So there is this bigger, the stone has been put, thrown into the ocean or the pool, and there is this huge ripple, and all these pieces connect. And how is it that we might respond responsibly? Because it feels like the train is headed toward a wreck, and it's frightening.
I think we're already wrecking. I think, the skyrocketing suicides, the very, very, very poor mental health of our young people, and it is declining. When we look at the achievement gap that is exacerbated by all of these issues, school is created for the purpose of teaching kids how to read and to write, to introduce them to the life of the mind, to help them be model and mature citizens for society. School is not designed to deal with mental health issues. School is not designed to fight social media conglomerates who are capitalizing on algorithms to direct students to internet content that keeps them on social media for longer and longer periods of time. That's not what we're in business for. We're in business to educate young minds, but all of these things are standing in the way, and we're crashing. We're crashing. And we can't keep our kids safe because, we don't want to take guns off of the streets, and neither do we want to pass legislation for stiffer gun legislation. We don't even want to reduce our kids' time on social media. So, we've got to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, what kind of society will we be in the next 2 decades? And the future does not look bright to me.
Okay, panel, we've got less than 2 minutes. A shortage of Girl Scout cookies has a Louisville connection. Little Brownie Bakers blames global supply chain issues, labor shortages, and unforeseen severe weather earlier this month, they say. Panelists, this is a trouble spot. Supply chain issues continue. Girl Scout cookies, about 1.5 minutes.
What ingredient is problematic in the supply chain? I mean, I'm trying to think of what's in a Girl Scout cookie. And also the fact that some of these Girl Scout cookies are becoming so rare that they're going for absurd amounts of money. My only hope is if someone's going to spend $25 for a box of 20 cookies, the money needs to go 100% to the Girl Scouts.
Any other favorites out there? We've got less than a minute.
Well,
we have too many kids on social media and not enough baking cookies.
All right, that'll bring to a close this edition of Moral Side of the News. Thank you to Harriett Akins Banman, Daniel Corrie Shull, Stan Miles, and Father Toan. You can catch this conversation again on YouTube anytime. Just go on there and search for Moral Side of the News. In just a few months, we'll celebrate the 70th annual WHAS Crusade for Children. And there's something special. You could win a kitchen full of GE appliances. Just go to WHAScrusade.org. That's WHAScrusade.org and purchase a raffle ticket to win a kitchen full of GE appliances.